Hello, this is No Boundaries, the podcast. And before we start, I just wanted to give a trigger warning because we will be discussing eating disorders again, just like last week. So if this is a difficult subject for you, you might want to pass on this episode. There's enough other episodes you can listen to. And also a disclaimer that we are not professionals, we are not specialists or doctors, but we speak from our own experience about certain subjects. So everything we say comes from us and is just our opinion. Without further ado, we're going to start. Hello, and again, welcome to No Boundaries, the podcast. This is a podcast in which we, a mother and daughter duo, have honest conversations, discuss controversial topics while also exploring our bond. And I'm the mother, and my name is Anusha.
And I'm the daughter, and my name is Lulu.
Today's episode, we're going to talk about my food disorder and also, of course, in general, also the effects it had on me being a mother and on Lulu being a child of a mother with an eating disorder. So again, if this is a triggering topic, this might not be the episode for you. But before we get into it, we're going to talk about our shout out and shame.
So our shout out and shame is a segment we do every week, and we like to shout out something, some type of media or news that we found important to share that we learned about this week, and also something that we didn't enjoy this week that we also would like to share.
So the shout out this week is an incredible podcast that has to do with food issues. It's called Maintenance Phase. It's from Aubrey Gordon and Michael Hobbs. They're both journalists, and they discuss actually any type of fat diet, fat wellness, whatever, and they debunk all the junk science behind those kind of fads and diets and way of eating. They've made incredible episodes, and everything they do is very well researched. So they don't just say something, they give the research, explain the whole junk science behind certain diets and food issues. So it's really wonderful and incredible to listen to, and they both know what they talk about because Aubrey is a larger woman. She also wrote an incredible book about her own issues and about her journey with food. And Michael Hobbs is a white gay man, but his mom dealt a lot with food issues, so he grew up with a mom who was always on a diet. So they come from those perspectives, and again, their research is impeccable. So that is my shout out of this week, of this episode.
And then for the shame of this week, not related to this topic, but more related to what's happening right now. Yesterday, I watched the new movie Sinners with my friends, and hear me out on this one. It's a big sensation. Everyone loves this movie, and it's gotten a lot of praise, which I'm happy about. I like this movie. I enjoyed it, and I'm very happy that there's finally being paid more attention to important Black stories to be told. But with that being said, there is a shame to it as well, because there is a lot of movies that have been made by women that are similar to Sinners that have been pretty much overlooked and weren't a big sensation. And this one is. So it's bittersweet. It's one of those moments where I'm happy, but I'm also sad because it just reminds me of movies that have been made for years similar to this, and they didn't get the credits they deserved. And two movies specifically that reminded me of, one of them is Mudbound, which is directed by Dee Reese, which also is during the Jim Crow era, just like Sinners, and it also has predominantly male characters, just like Sinners, but the difference is the whole entire crew is women. It's made by women, and you can tell the depth in which the story goes and the metaphors as well. It's very thought through. Another one is Woman King, which is produced by Viola Davis and her husband, and Viola Davis also plays the lead character in this movie. And it's another movie that I think it matches more the genre of Sinners as with like action movie and kind of more like the Marvel storyline. But again, it's so well done. It has so many important details, and you genuinely learn so much about colonization and the transition from enslaved people to then the trading of goods and resources and soils. So two very good movies that more people should talk about. So it's like a half shame.
Yeah, so watch Sinners, right? Because it's amazing to watch it, and especially, is it like a big cinema movie?
Big cinema movie. You have to see it on the big screen.
But also watch Woman King and also watch Mudbound. Okay, on to our subject. We're picking up where we left off last week. We spoke about eating disorders and disordered eating. We kind of spoke a little bit about the difference, and we used sort of my journey through my whole food journey, which has been a long one. Started at 10 years old and kind of ended right after the pandemic. So can you imagine? That's been really, really long.
And what specific eating disorder was that?
The specific eating disorder we spoke about is it started with a young age with disordered eating. Then it became a food disorder, which for me meant excessive dieting, excessive working out, binge eating, and also for like 10 years of my life, bulimic eating. That means binging and throwing up, but also sometimes even if I didn't eat a lot, still also, getting rid of the food by purging. So that has been my food disorder for a long time. And then when I stopped purging, I still experienced a lot of binge eating.
Yeah. And I think another important thing that we want to emphasize again was there's a big difference between disordered eating and an eating disorder. Disordered eating is a lot more common. A lot of people, especially women in our society, are victims to that. Like if you feel the need to have certain diets or restrictions, or you're very focused on how much you're eating, how many calories you're taking in, that could easily be disordered eating. But an eating disorder is actually it's like a diagnosis, and it goes beyond just controlled eating, and often has very severe impacts on your physical and mental health, such as throwing up, or eating to the point where you might not eating to the point where you might pass out or end up in a hospital. So very more risks on your...
Yeah. And psychological, as in having severe depressions or anxiety or really high highs and low lows, Yeah.
With that being said, today we're going to focus more on what it was like for her to be a mom while still battling her eating disorder, and specifically on my end, what it was like for me to grow up with a mom with an eating disorder, because as I would get older, the more I would catch on, and it's definitely something that I was aware of growing up. So that's what we're going to be diving into today.
Yeah. Very difficult for me to talk about, but I think it's very important. And if we can help anyone by having this conversation, I'm happy.
I guess we can start before the kids came. We can start with you and my dad, her husband, because I think it's interesting because my dad, your husband, he's a psychiatrist, and he focuses on all sorts of mental health, mental disorders, and he also focused a lot on OCD and had several patients that were anorexic. So I think it's interesting that you had a professional and then
and a patient.
You have
not his patient. That's not how we met.
Exactly. No. So I'm kind of interested in eventually, did you start opening up to him? Did he notice? And how did that work? Because he can't really be your doctor, he's your partner. So how was that dynamic?
I think I opened up to him pretty soon, because once I came out as somebody who suffered from eating disorders, I was pretty open about it if I had intimate and warm, friendly relationships. So I told him pretty soon. And at that point, he wasn't specialized in OCD yet. He was finishing up his psychiatry. He was, doing his residency and stuff. So he wasn't sure what he was going to specialize in. He also was interested in schizophrenia. So it wasn't for him sort of looking at me as a potential patient, thank God. And because I'm really good at masking, I'm being, of course, a mixed woman, I'm really good at code switching.
And an actress.
And an actress. So, of course, the first couple of years, I was really, really good at, making it less serious. And, of course, and I was getting help. So I was also in therapy in the Netherlands. I came back to the Netherlands from studying in the United States, so New York City. So I had therapy. I was handling it. And again, dieting is so normal. So the fact that I was a woman who was always on a diet, all his school friends and all the women he knew were often on a diet. So it took a while. And thank God, I wasn't purging anymore. So I had really gotten over that in New York City. So it wasn't a huge, big deal to him the first few years.
Okay. So that's how he found out, and then moving forward, how was it for him and you? Like, did he see the hardships of your eating disorder, or was it already, you were already like getting over it? How was it moving forward?
No, it took a while for me to really get over it, another 20 years. So no, he did find out. There were periods where even though I didn't purge anymore on a regular basis, sometimes if I was very stressful, if I had a very difficult time, it would sometimes happen or occur. And it's not that I would tell him like, hey, I'm gonna, but I would open up to him and tell him like, listen, I'm having a very difficult period. Some stuff has been happening, and plus he saw me struggle a lot with dieting or witnessing sort of like binges without me trying to mask that it was a binge. No, I just want a snack. And then because at some point we lived together, so it was, which made me very stressed. There was also a period that I would eat at night, get out of bed, because he's a very good sleeper. So it's been on and off that he noticed it, and that would affect our relationship and also even our intimate life, because I would feel fat or ugly or horrible, didn't want him to touch me or, so yeah, it definitely affected also
and how did
marriage.
How did he respond to these things? Like how was that conflicting?
No, it wasn't conflicting. Your dad is very, very nice and very warm. So what is incredible is that he just always told me and showed me by his actions how much he loves me and how much I'm always beautiful to him. Even if I would gain weight or lose weight, that's not the point. He always loved me. And of course, having children and, gaining weight during pregnancy and having a hard time getting rid of the weight afterwards was very difficult for me, very triggering. And even through that, he was always incredible and loving and only giving me compliments. So I don't know how I would have coped if I would have been with some other type of guy who was sort of like, when are you getting back into shape? And why aren't you in the gym? Or even I would go to the gym and I would try to get in shape. But there's so many factors that play into losing weight, gaining weight. I couldn't just, plus I was in my 30s when I had kids, so it didn't go as fast, right?
Yeah.
So that was very, very difficult. So I don't know how I would have handled it with somebody else who wasn't as empathetic and loving and who loves women in all types of bodies like your dad does.
Yeah, like I was going to say, that's one thing that is beautiful about my dad.
Sorry, we're getting it. Yeah, as I said, this is a difficult topic.
That's one thing that's beautiful about my dad that I've always noticed, that he's been with you through every stage of your eating disorder, and he's always been super patient, supportive, and loving, and he's been very careful on what to say and what not to say, which is important. Like I've watched you go through like a lot of different diets, and so has he, and it was very common that like every month there would be like a new thing that you would convince us all that this is the way to do it. And when I was young, I didn't understand that, but what I do remember is that like my dad was always very like supportive and very like cool, and he would not be like, oh, but you just said this last week, and oh, what about the other diet you had? Like he was very like open to listen always, and super like calm, because he knows there's no point in arguing it, because the whole thing with eating disorders, there's no logic behind it. There isn't. It's just a constant power battle. So he was very good with that, and I feel like unless you asked him for his like professional advice based on his knowledge, he wouldn't say too much, because there's no point. Like a lot of people with eating disorders, they know as well the good and bad, so there's no point in telling them, oh, that's not how it works, that's not how you should do it, because if it was that easy, they wouldn't have been going through it in the first place, I think.
Yeah, and I think just like with any addiction, you create your own logic.
Exactly.
Right? So for me, it was extremely logic. So if somebody would say to me, what you're doing now is nonsensical, it's very hard to believe that, because no, but look, I read this article and it's based on research and this and that. And, look, and all these amazing examples of people who are over it because now they are doing intermittent fasting. So that for me is the key. Then I can eat anything I want, but just only these 3 hours a day. And because you wanna. The hard thing about having an eating disorder is that you so want to make sense of the the madness and all the thoughts in your head. So you're clinging on to any piece of hope. You're just hoping for that golden ticket.
Yeah, no, literally. Yeah, that's a big thing, that you create your own logic. I agree. And yeah, that's something that is hard, because I feel like if somebody, like you said, if somebody were to try to tell you this is not logic, this doesn't make sense, I think you would become very defensive.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing that I want to address, because it's hard, because how can someone support you? Because at the same time, it's harmful for them to maybe see you do all these things and buy all these products and these things that they know won't work. But at the same time, it's hard for them to talk to you because you don't want to hear it. So what would your advice be for that, I guess? It's a hard question. But
it's a hard question. No, I think empathy. You have to, as long as you come from empathy, and you take your time with it. So not like, why are you doing this or this? Like really quickly on your way out. No, but if you can say to someone in a loving way, and that's also what friends have said to me, or maybe even, I'm not sure if your dad, because he's very empathetic, of course. Plus he believes very much in your own responsibility, right? But if, as a friend would say like, hey, like a friend who I didn't shout out last week, who also supported me a lot through literally thick and thin, is my friend Esther, who also went through her own issues. And what was so incredible about our friendship is that she would say like, hey, when you're ready to talk about it, I'm here. And yeah, thank God there was a period when I was ready to talk about it. And I think she's even the one who told me about reading Janine Roth, an author I mentioned last week as well. So if you take your time and you come from empathy and love, and while you do that, give space for the other also to go through their reaction, right? Somebody needs time to kind of maybe be annoyed and defensive, and just listen, and you don't always have to interject, give it time. Then you can, I think that's a good way of starting the conversation from a safe space. And there's also, so Janine Roth writes about it, there's a lot of literature now, and especially now with the internet. I mean, when I was 20, there was no internet, it was just starting up, that you can also read about it, how to start those conversations.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting how you said specifically that it comes from like a place of care rather than quickly on your way out, because I think that's a big one. It's like very common that in a moment that it's happening, you're like, what, and this, and you're protective, so you're like, why would you do that? Why are you ordering all this stuff? But that doesn't work. Like, I think it's so important that when you do have this conversation, you need to make sure it's in a very like calm setting, and that there's a lot of time to have any kind of reaction, and not like a quick thing, and definitely not in a moment thing, because in a moment I feel like you're already in denial, and I feel like in a different time it's easier to reflect rather than as you're doing it.
Yeah.
And because then you can easily feel like I'm getting caught, and then you feel like defensive.
Of course.
And that's what you said is important. Allow them to have that reaction. This is not only about like making sure you're right or people understand you. This is about you care and you want to let them know you're here. So even if they get defensive and mad and they disagree with you, just the fact that you put it out there, later on they're gonna be thinking about it, and it's gonna eventually have an effect. And in a moment they might disagree with you and be annoyed, but maybe a week later, maybe a month later, they're gonna remember this conversation. They're gonna see it as, wow, like this person cared, and they might come back to you when they're ready. So I think just because someone is in denial, it doesn't mean that that there's no purpose in you still talking to them, because they can still listen and hear it. It just might take a little longer for them to process it.
Yeah, and I just want to say also, I can imagine if you witness it, it's so difficult, because if somebody is a drug addict or, does something like cutting them, something that is so quote unquote societally clear that it's dangerous, food is like, again, we spoke about it last week also, you have to eat every day. Everybody has to eat all the time. You can never not eat. So food is such a problematic topic in that sense. You can't just stop doing it, right? So and everybody has a certain relationship with food. Food is emotion. Food is so much. So I can also imagine that for people who watch it, it's so difficult to talk about it to somebody you love, because you want them to enjoy food. But you also, if you do a little research, people can die. I mean, purging, forcing yourself to purge as I did on a daily basis for 10 years, I could have gotten a heart attack. You know, if I think about it now, that I could have died from a heart attack. Plus, I have a fast beating heart in general. You know, it's very, very dangerous. So it is dangerous. People can die from it. So but you have to continue eating, right? So it's such...
Yeah, like it's not something you can just get rid of.
No.
If you have a bad relationship with eating or a bad relationship with drugs, like with drugs at least, it's something that you can actively have a goal. Like there's a really specific way how to get off drugs. But with food, how to fix your relationship with food is so much more complex. Especially because there's so many types of foods and so many types of bodies. Like it's so hard to even define what is a good relationship with food, what is healthy eating. And it's something that has to be part of you forever. You can never let go of food.
You can never let go of food. And a book that really helped me also, and I have it here and I always tell everybody, it's called Always Hungry, which explains the science about food, which explains really with great research written by doctors about how food and a body works. So it helps you to realize you need food and you need to eat. Like I said, you know, like we feed like small children, try to eat at least 5 times a day, meaning 3 meals, 2 snacks, or even better, 3 meals, 3 snacks that you eat throughout the whole day to keep your blood sugar at a certain level, to at least normalize that, because you have to eat. You can never not eat.
So there's one specific thing that I realized last time we had the episode that I wanted to say. So one thing that I want to talk about mainly because I feel so bad now and I want to address it because we've never spoken about this ever.
Oh my God.
Since it happened.
No boundaries to podcast, guys.
So basically, I remember very specific memory, when I was young. I don't know my age, but we lived in the Netherlands and I was definitely like a little girl. I remember it was one of the first times where I was with you and we were going through your pictures from when you were a young adult / teenager because I wanted to see what my mom looked like when she was young. And I remember that there was a picture of you and I told you, oh my gosh, Mom, you look so skinny here and you look so good. And after that is when my mom was like, oh, you're so right. And she started dieting. And that's when my first memory as a kid that I realized, wow, my mom was like really on a diet and going out of her way to lose weight. And I remember that my mom even told me that and that I was proud. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, thanks to me, my mom's not losing weight and getting like a healthy body. Like, messed up. And like, guys, I was a child, okay? Like I was like 6, like, don't come for me, please.
No.
But
no.
We've never spoken about this.
No.
And I never remembered it until last time when we had that conversation and all these memories came back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that must have been extremely harmful. To hear that from your own child and then your own child to be proud, look what I'm doing. Meanwhile, you're like probably not having a good time at all. And like, yeah, I wanted to speak on how that period was because, and I want to say I'm so sorry. Like, that's not okay. And that's important that how, like, if you're not fully through an eating disorder, your children could potentially make it worse because children say everything they think.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, okay, a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
First of all, you don't need to apologize. No, you're a child and you were also already a victim of how society treats women and how society looks at female bodies. So at 6 years old, you're already completely aware of how society says what a woman should look like. So I absolutely don't, you don't need to apologize to me. I totally know where it came from. That's first. Second, at that point, when you said that, I was literally happy. I mean, it literally was like, yes, Lulu is right. You were 6. That means I've had 3 pregnancies, 2 full term, and 1 I lost a child at 6 months. I had to give birth to a baby that didn't make it. Again, another, lots of trigger warnings this episode. And we adopted a child. So a lot had happened in those 6 years, right? And of course, like I said, hormonal changes, emotional changes also have an effect on your body. And I was holding on to a lot of weight and a lot of water weight and a lot. I remember that period because I was so unhappy. I was so depressed of losing a child. I was so overwhelmed by having 3 children, 1 adopted, by still working professionally as an actress, performing. It was a lot. So my body, I think, was protecting me by, almost like giving me this barrier. And also, I was numbing myself with food. So I was completely in this circle, in this cycle of holding on to something to protect myself, eating to numb myself because I wasn't happy with that protection, trying to also be a mom and looking at other Dutch moms who were already back into shape, who were already back to their old sizes, and me looking at, oh my God, I'm so huge. So all of that was going on, and I was like, I need to get out of it. I need to get out of it. How do you get out of it? And even in therapy, there was something I couldn't even discuss because I was still discussing losing my child and now being a mother of 3 and all, all those emotions. So how I remember is when you told me that, it was like, yes, I just have to snap back. And yeah, that means I have to diet. Even though I've struggled with food issues my whole life and I promised myself I would never diet again, maybe now it's time because I'm going to be 40, it's only going to get harder. I have to diet.
No,
so
that's
thank God.
Yeah, that's how I remember it as well. I remember it as a good moment where you were like,
yes,
glow up time. Yeah, but obviously
diet.
Now, looking back, it wasn't a good moment at all.
I mean, no, because no, it wasn't good, and it got me in that I got really it got bad again.
Because after that is when I remember you had multiple different diets, and it was like every month you would order all these new things all of a sudden, that this was good and then that was good. And I remember snacks would disappear at night and that kind of stuff, so the binging was still happening. It was always at night. It was always this thing where we would eat as dessert and then the next day it was all of a sudden gone. But then when we would eat dessert, you would either not want dessert or maybe a tiny piece, but then the next day the dessert was gone. And
everything else. No. No, it was heartbreaking. It was terrible, and I was performing, 6 nights a week. So it was a very, very difficult period. And like I said, so we go through so many hormonal changes. And can you imagine, 3 pregnancies in 6 years, all of that? I mean, what that does to your body. Only the hormonal imbalance and change, not alone all the physical change. And then society, celebrating women who snap back in 4 weeks. Like, oh, she had a baby in 4 weeks and look, she's back to her old size. I mean, it's just so toxic and so terrible. And even though I'd sworn after my therapy in New York that I would never, ever diet again, that set me off to a path of serious dieting. And then after a couple of years, I went back into like a very serious therapy in the Netherlands at a place for addiction. For food addiction. And I had group therapy for almost a year to get rid of food addiction. So that was specifically for people who would binge and eat and diet, but who were not purging, or at least not. So it was not for people who had, like, it's called officially bulimia nervosa. So people when you eat and you purge. This was for overeaters. This was an overeaters therapy, and that helped me a lot.
And I think for that moment, it was obviously not good that I said that, but at the same time, that's things you do need to be aware of if you have an eating disorder and you have children, because children will make comments. They don't realize that empathy that my dad had for you, we didn't have that. Because for us, it was genuinely like, what, this, that, like we would say everything we think.
Yeah.
I think the only good thing about me making that comment that I still believe to this day is good, was that it also gave you the sense of, wow, because I remember you told me later on too, that those same pictures where I said, oh, you looked so like skinny, you thought back then genuinely that you were super big.
Yeah.
And I think the only good thing was that it was one of the first times where you probably had that like body dysmorphia, where you actually could see like, wow, like, I wasn't big at all, but I thought I was big back then. So I feel like that was the only good thing, that it made you more like precious and feel like, wow, I wish I would have enjoyed them more when I was younger. So
and also it helped me, again, that's where body politics comes into play, that our female bodies, and especially women of color, black women, our bodies are a political act. And that's something you really have to realize, and that made me learn, because even on those pictures, but like I said, even when I was at my absolute thinnest, I was always seen as a big girl, because I'm tall, I'm big boned, I have broad shoulders, I have, I'm very muscly. If I go to the gym for like 1 week, you see it right away. So I was, no, but even though I had like, a very low percentage of body fat, I was always the biggest compared to the other girls. Even girls who had maybe technically my same size with clothes looked different because I'm a strong woman. And I had to learn to embrace and love that body. I had to be proud of the fact that I'm from strong stock, from African side and from Russian side, from people who worked on the land, who worked with their bodies, who were strong and resilient, and who survived famine and who survived colonialism, and who were survivors, and women who would, from my dad's side of the African family, who were also warriors. So they had these kind of bodies in order to be able to protect their children, or to protect where they were from, or protect their land. So I had to learn to be proud of that. And that's not something that society teaches you. That's not something that the media, tells you, or that you learn in school, or that teachers tell you. So it's really, 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 really important. It's something I want to stress for every woman, to learn and to study your body and where you're from, and your genetics, and your histories, and your culture, and your roots.
Because your body looks that way for a reason.
Yes.
Natural selection.
And to be proud of that.
Yeah.
To be proud of that, right? And then a lot we don't even know, because women's studies, even now in the United States, they've slashed a lot of money again in studying a disease and female disease, women's diseases. And if you even look at medication, they hardly even research what the effects are on women. So I think it's only the tip of the iceberg of what we know about our incredible, beautiful, complex, manifesting, life-changing bodies. And you know that yourself, you went for puberty. That's already such a big thing that happens, And then as a woman also in your 20s you have changes. And then when you start having children there are changes. And then now you're going to perimenopause, premenopause. So our bodies are always in flux. And what do we know? So that is something I want to say. You have to be so proud of that body that carries you, that loves you, that's there every day. That is really something that now that I'm older, I'm so more appreciative of my body. And I still have moments like, even now today, like sitting here, I'm like, oh, I'm talking about my body, and people who watch this on YouTube are going to look at my body and what do they think? And then I say to myself, that's just a thought. That's just conditioning by society. This is my body. I love my body. I'm proud of my body. I have an amazing body. So that's, it's a constant struggle.
No, I agree.
How is that for you? Because if looking at you, I don't think, do you struggle with your body? Do you have any body issues?
I feel like I definitely had body issues growing up, but not eating disorder issues or anything like that. But obviously everyone has their insecurities. But I think what it was for me was that anytime I expressed any type of insecurity about my body, it got shot down so quick. Because I've been told by everyone from different cultures and everyone in my life always that I had a perfect body. Like, even by, in the Netherlands where it's different body standards, my friends were always very wow, your body is so nice. And whenever I would even feel, hint at something, people would be like, what are you talking about? People would get angry. How dare you be insecure? So it's something that I got shut down so much that at some point I never spoke about anymore. And then it just kind of disappeared over time. I think the only thing that I struggled with for very long was my shoulders, my broad shoulders.
Yeah, I remember.
So we both have broad shoulders, and as you said, it comes from very important history. But that was the only thing that I had a hard time with, which sounds so silly now for me to say. And I literally wouldn't wear any tank tops. Any kind of tops where my shoulders would be exposed, I wouldn't wear them because I thought they were so big. And even now to this day, I'm able to wear tops that show my shoulders, but not if my hair's in a bun. My hair needs to be down so it's a little bit more neutral.
Oh, wow.
But I would never wear tops. And here comes the part where I said there's no logic. Because I wouldn't wear any tops that show my shoulders, but I would wear skin-tight long-sleeve tops. Which also you can still see the exact same shape of the shoulders. they're still there, but for some reason, as long as it was covered, it didn't look bad compared to when it's out, which it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but you create your own logic to deal with
it. In my head, it made sense, and it made me feel better, so that's all that mattered, even though people knew.
Yeah.
But
Can I ask you also something? How did I handle, as a mom, how was I regarding your body, or how?
You also was one of those people that was like, how could you be insecure? Yeah. You would also shut it down until you realized one time how insecure I really was about my shoulders, and you saw me like really having a hard moment. You realize, okay, this is not just some girl who wants attention. It's like, oh, my body's not perfect. Like, you realize this was an actual body dysmorphia thing for me. But again, like, my shoulders, that's such a minor thing. Like, I had so much anxiety about it, and I was so insecure about it for so long. And I'm just now, recently, like, I want to say 1 or 2 years ago, starting to get over it. And I remember it was funny. I went to visit my old roommate in college, and we went to party, and I asked if I could borrow one of her tops. And she was like, yeah, I have this top, and then I have these 2 tops that are really cute, but they show your shoulders, and I know you don't want to wear that. And I was like, actually, I wear that now. And she was like, oh my gosh. So that was funny. That was like a fun moment for it. So again, it could be something so little that comes so big in your head. Like, body dysmorphia comes in all different forms. Yeah. And a big thing that helped me get through it as well is that when you have specific things you're insecure about, that's all you notice, and that's what you focus on. Every time I met a girl, the first thing I focus on is their shoulder. When they wear a top that shows their shoulders, I'm always comparing my shoulders to theirs, and I'm always watching that, and I'm always so worried about that. Meanwhile, if you would ask someone else, they're going to be like, I don't even know what her shoulders look like. Like, they've never even thought of it. And the same goes, like, I had other friends, they would do the same thing, but then with stomachs or with legs. Yeah. So that's helped me to remind myself, like, this is so big in my head because that's all I look at. But other people, they're only looking at what they're insecure about. So again, it's just a reflection of what you are insecure about. People aren't even looking at you, judging you. They're more looking at it to compare with themselves because they're insecure. So again, that helped me be less scared to be perceived because people are not perceiving you, they're perceiving their own insecurities. Yeah. That's the truth. I think one thing that's important, and I hope it becomes like a chain in a way, is because your mom grew up with like probably body issues as well. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, she grew up when women had no rights. She grew up in the middle of the war, lost her family. So she has this thing where it's like, I went through body dysmorphia plus all of this. And then she gets a daughter who has like the perfect life, who then complains about her body. So then it's kind of like, well, at least you're not doing all of this. And then you had an extreme eating disorder with like harmful effects on your health, going to the hospital. And then you have a daughter who's just complaining about shoulders. So it's like, what? Yeah. So that's a big thing where it starts bigger and gets smaller and smaller. So it's easier to think like, what is my daughter complaining about? But again, just because someone goes through something smaller than another person, it doesn't make it invalid. Like, there's always someone who might have it worse than you. Of course. But it doesn't make it invalid because you still feel how you feel and you can't control it. And yeah, you can be like, well, there's people who do this and that. No, doesn't matter.
It's not about comparing. It's not
about exactly. Everyone has a different journey. And you're still stuck with these feelings. So telling yourself that other people have it worse, it's not going to get rid of how you feel bad. So that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one. So where are we at now?
I think it's still I still think it's a big part. But you say it's not. Because ever since we've been in New York, I think it's still a thing where once in a while you order a bunch of things. Like, you had the while where you had the keto food, then you had the factor fridge food, but then you had the fasting, and then you had the alcohol-free drinks. That was a thing that also had to do with calories or like your body. So I feel like it's always been a thing. Like, I've always been used to you having a different diet every time, and now I don't take it serious anymore, but in the past I did. And I feel like now I just kind of, I'm like, oh, whatever, like, it's just one of her phases again, which is like obviously not good. But that was more when I was still living at home.
But so if you look at now the last, like, say 2 years.
The last 2 years? Definitely not as bad anymore, for sure. I do think you still ask me a lot about how your body looks in clothes and before you go out, and you want to make sure your body looks a certain way, especially when we go into like predominantly white areas. So I think it's less so with eating, and especially since you're not into cooking. That definitely made a difference since you started making your own meals and seeing what goes into your food. I think that definitely helped you a lot by eating more fulfilling meals. But I think now it's more so how your body looks and still like, yeah, looks wise, I don't think you're over it. I think food wise, you're on a very good spot.
Yeah.
But looks wise, it's still definitely a conversation at least once a month, I think.
Yeah. I think I agree with you that that's still an issue.
Yeah.
I think it is in that sense more so not a disorder anymore, but disordered thinking.
Yeah.
Which like 95% of women have. So how sad as it sounds, it has normalized the way I look at my body. But like you said, I think it's what's very important. That is what saved my life, is that my food is now at least really quote unquote. I don't like the word normal, but it's pretty normal.
It's fulfilling. It fills you up and it satisfies you.
I eat when I'm hungry.
Yeah.
And I stop when I'm satisfied. And a big deal would help me a lot is medication. Because a form of ADHD also is related to impulse control. So this medication helps with impulse control. And impulsivity can be, of course, in what you do. Like a lot of people with ADHD just, do impulsive things, like especially physically. But it can also be impulsive thoughts. And with me, it's a lot of impulsive thoughts, which also has, like, again, a connection with OCD, which research also showed there might be a connection between OCD and other food disorders like anorexia, because that is also has to do with your thought process, right? So I was always thinking about food. What did I eat? How much did I eat? Can I have more? Can I have less? Did it was too much? Was it not enough? That was a constant soundtrack in my brain day and night. Didn't matter what time, even if I was, with my children. When the only thing I didn't have it is if I was on stage or if I'm performing. Then it was away. Otherwise, all the time, those thoughts. Even if I go to a concert or even if I'm reading a book, all the time. So that is so tiring, so frustrating, so drugs. You literally have the feeling, just like having like some people have a sound in their ear the whole time. You have to learn how to live with that, right? And that is gone because of the medication. So that freed up so much for me to then just focus on, again, all the books I read, all the research I've done, all the therapy I had, just eating and stopping when I'm satisfied. So that is really, really over for definitely 2-3 years now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, society and the way people look at you in society, unfortunately, still affects me. Yeah,
and with that being said, although you still have a lot of insecurities or issues with how your body looks, and there's certain outfits you won't wear, or sometimes you take long to find the outfit that makes your body look nice. I think even though that's still a part of you, it doesn't affect your food habit anymore. And I think that's a big thing that's important.
Yeah.
Because you'll tell me that, oh, you don't like how your body looks in this outfit, but that same day, you'll still eat whatever you want to eat. You'll still have a dessert. So at least it doesn't have any influence anymore on how you eat. And that's what's the most important part.
I haven't dieted in years.
Exactly.
It's very double because I'm happy with my size. I have a perfectly normal, completely healthy, great size. But still, how female bodies, and especially black women's, women of color, but black women's bodies are still policed. Yeah, still has effect on me. And speaking about it makes me so sad because, I feel so bad for so many women who go through it, and that stays your whole life, and that obviously never ends. And then, before you know it, you're old, and then you're being, of course, discriminated against because you're an old woman. So it's just really, really, really sad and horrible to realize how women are policed and how we also do it to each other, even if we don't mean it, or, and how it's perpetuated, not to blame ourselves, but just like with internalized racism, there's also internalized body shaming and, blaming and discriminating against each other, or, jealousy, which is completely all societally understandable. That's why I keep saying that body politics is so important, because we have to liberate ourselves culturally, economically, because we all know the diet industry and the food industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So we have to liberate ourselves societally, commercially, culturally, economically, of that shame, of that prison we're in. If you look at beautiful art pieces in museums, that's why I think it's important to go to museums and you look at beautiful sculptures of women with all types of bodies. Also bodies that you can obviously see that we would now, quote unquote, call, overweight or whatever. I hate that word, but you know what I mean, that are not in vogue right now. But then you see it in its beauty on a plateau, in a beautiful surrounding, that you see there's beauty in any type, in diversity of bodies. So yeah, I hope this is a conversation we'll keep on having, I think. And I hope we can learn, and I'm saying this to myself and to you all, to everyone, learn to love and appreciate ourselves and our diversity and the beauty of diverse bodies.
Yeah, and one thing that helped me with that is to surround yourself with the right kind of people. That's a big one. Like, I'm now in I've never been as confident as I've been ever in my life now. And that's all thanks to my friends that I surround myself with. Like, I'm friends with basically all just like very positive, open-minded women, a lot of queer women. And the guy friends that I have are very open-minded and respectful and actually amazing. Like, I couldn't be more happy. So I think going from being friends with people who I thought were cool or who I wanted to like me or were guys I wanted validation from, instead now being friends with like genuinely amazing human beings with amazing personalities rather than who looks cool, it like saved my life. Like, I've never been more confident. These are people that genuinely lift me up and make me feel good about myself, and it's amazing. So I think surrounding yourself with the right people is definitely very important as well.
Very important. And I know there's now really quick fixes with the semaglutide, the shots that people are taking. We still don't know what the long-term effects are, and there are also downsides. There's certain people who can take them even though they lose weight because they literally become sick and can't eat at all anymore. Plus, there's also people who, when they get off those shots, gain lots of weight and then some, So we still don't know what the long-term effects are of that. So I don't think there's like a quick fix now. Yeah, there's no problem anymore because you just take a shot. That's what I want to say. And what I also want to say is, we spoke about this before also in other subjects. It's so easy to give love and to give compliments. Let's do that more. You can always say to someone else, you're beautiful, because of so many reasons other than the way somebody looks. Because somebody is a beautiful person, somebody is an amazing, warm, loving person, and somebody has a beautiful smile or a beautiful aura or a beautiful way of speaking. Let's give more love to each other without focusing on the only looks. Let's look at the inside and compliment that as well.
Yeah, that's one thing I've been doing recently is giving out compliments, and I literally watch it make people's days and watch people be so happy, and I see the change in their energy, and it's like the most beautiful thing. Like, the fact that such one little sentence can do so much for someone is amazing. So that's one thing I've been doing. Like, every time I think of something positive or something, instead of just thinking it, I always say it.
Yeah. And
it helps so much. So much.
So, positive ending.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think, this is it for this episode. Again, we want to thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe. And we also have a Substack where we have a weekly newsletter, which will post all the relative links are in that Substack, in that newsletter, research and everything we spoke about in this episode. Please give us a 5-star review as independent podcast makers. That's really important to us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's also really important to us. We need more reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That really, really helps us right now, visibility. And as I always say, I love you, I love me, and we love y'all.